Welcome to the session on the Green Corridor Relocation. As you have heard President Kenya yesterday talking about green industrialization and shaping the new narrative to implement the concept and values of just energy transition. This is a new narrative for us, another new narrative for media advising, discussing to make sure that they will leverage energy transition to industrialize. And to do that, we're working on the future producing companies that can the expertise needed to define that strategy requires a lot of knowledge and experience and research. This session will try to highlight some of the key factors that media is relying on to define. So today we are very pleased to moderate the really great this team invited and our host. So we have my right. What is the objective and what is the concept of green corridor, which I believe might be a new concept for
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored, delighted to be here on this occasion. The Maersk McKinney Moller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping was established about 3 years ago on a philanthropic donation. And the overall objective is to help accelerate the transition of shipping towards sustainable shipping. And the question at that time was how to do that in the most effective way, given the economic condition, acknowledging that a lot of individual activities are going on with both the public sector and governments and also private sector and companies investing in innovation and R&D and so on. So the question was how to contribute to such a backup system. And the decision was to establish a center to become a collaboration platform for public, private parties of that ecosystem, of that system, to bring these partners together to co-create a vision of sustainable shipping, to co-create pathways of how to get there, and then also to work into the details of concepts and solutions of the future. And some of those concepts and solutions, they are sort of components of the system. So that will be demonstrated, for example, how we produce new fuels, or how we maintain the safety of the new fuels, or how we do life cycle analysis of the new systems and solutions. But one important element in that was to demonstrate how that whole new system connects and becomes a system. And that activity is called Green Corridor. So the Green Corridor activity, that portfolio of projects with us, we have about 6 of them, is where we connect country policies to onshore energy developments, to onshore industrial developments, to the ports, to the shipping activity, which is where we have our presence and focus, and to the cargo owners. So, for example, so we have green corridors now, basically all over the world. We're extremely happy to have now this first green corridor project in the African We have worked far into some of these projects, and I'd like to mention particularly the one we're doing in Chile, where we're looking at renewable energy production, both south and north of Chile. We're looking at various ports in Chile that are to be upgraded to store the future fuels, and also allow shipping companies to bunker these fuels into the ships and the ports, and also to particular cargo owners in Chile. So, for example, we have a very large mining industry, and some of the copper mines in Chile are interested in transporting the goods out of Chile. in a decarbonized way, so that companies building, for example, electric vehicles or doing other kinds of transition activities, transmission lines and so on, where they need copper. And now in the future get copper, which is decarbonized. So that's really what we do in the sense that we have now 100 organizations government agencies and these companies, and we work on technical solutions, commercial regulation. So it's really all of it. And in the Green Corridor, it all comes together. So I'm extremely pleased and eager to move forward together with this project. And really thank you very much for that.
Thanks for letting us. Fascinating to hear the
and then they came up with this like saying but digital transformation will allow you
changes across the whole you need to start in some specific locations. Something is going to happen
I can't get it
everywhere.
you're not going to get in the
That's
office.
precisely the vision that drives us.
How are they going to get
We set up about 5 years ago something called the Emission Possible Partnership that started with sector level. What are the pathways towards net zero for steel, aluminium, or cement, and for shipping and for aviation, and for heavy transport. And obviously you see green hydrogen cutting across many of these things. We're very high for MVP to support the Sun shipping corridor, particularly in Asia. But there's also Rotterdam, preparations for all of this. Yesterday, the president of the G28 launched the industrial transition.
It's going up.
And the Mission Possible Partnership that we set up is to connect what we're doing and to connect and highlight the efforts that Namibia's doing. That's what we've been trying to do since we started working together. It's been 2 years. We started by thinking that we could utilize this strategy. Help bring together some of the analysis of models, etc. Supporting Namibia also in exchanging with potential project partners. And what is clear now is that this is really just the beginning. And you said at the outset that this is obviously about making Namibia zero carbon. It's much bigger than that. It's for Namibia to become the source of energy for many other countries that and that might also need some of the power.
Now I bring this back. Today we think
and in particular the vision of the shipping corridor, because I was given 5 years, I was given a tour of the state.
all of that.
And it was just remarkable to see the new docks being constructed. One level transport links up into Angola, across into Botswana, from south, from Lutz into South Africa. And I think a lot of the traffic that currently is coming from arriving in Europe should be coming to Wolf. And if you can lay out a green hydrogen, it really becomes a very compelling proposition. What we also believe, and we applaud your government for the ambition your president laid this out in Square here at the General Assembly in New York, where he called for an industrialization strategy for the country. That includes shipping. We are not able to anchor in the unique process that we have, which is unparalleled green hydrogen, rare earth, uranium, and a few other amazing terms of ourselves. So we put those together. The future of industrial industries have always sprung up where the power sits or where the energy sits. So initially, business where the industrial outlets are. And the geography of industry is going to change with the resource endowments, and also increasingly will be based on the power to drive green hydrogen. So we're very excited to do. I think Jay was having this tomorrow, the work on it. Yes, should you dive into the different industries and really, first of all, map out the industries that have been developed around it down this and then to prioritize them and to work on very specific next steps. So green shipping obviously is on that list on obviously. But there is also green steel. There are lots of iron ore deposits in Guinea, for example. Well, that can be shipped down to Namibia to make green steel instead of going over to Europe or to India. There are other inputs for the chemicals industry, like green methanol, is really important. So what potential might there be also for ammonia obviously is critical. It's still too expensive and not enough, not used to it. So it could become green. Ammonia. There's potential around transport, shipping we've discussed, but also long distance right through rail through trucking. What we want to do is to really quantify those opportunities and understand the very specific steps.
How do we look at it?
This is about
That enhance our relationship.
this is how we say it.
Instead of how do we look at a
What are the opportunities for those who could be a counterparty to turn Namibia into what it should be? And what we are very convinced of that, which is the water green power. This could actually close a very important circles because Africa has been trying to industrialize since
performing really well
and it's not
comes back to leadership. Comes back to
successful, and so please count on us to be there.
It was amazing to listen to our vision just being told through different lenses. And I think that's very important for the Namibian people, but also for everyone else around the world, because you know, when African governments got together and put together Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, it's essentially this, right? It's industrialization in a sustainable manner, in a way that leads to gross capital fixed formation, jobs, and quality jobs at that, and really impacting inequality. It's something we've always wanted to do. But now what we're doing as African governments and as African leaders is we're getting into the nitty-gritties. We're going to do pre-feasibility studies. We're going to look at the socioeconomic modeling of these particular industries. And so in Namibia 2021, really when we started this journey, the president put out his socioeconomic manifesto for his last term. And in the economic advancement pillar, goal number 3, the first activity says that Namibia is going to champion green economy and blue economy as a catalyst for economic recovery in Namibia. And I think at the time, everyone was sort of struggling to say, what does that mean? And just actually a day ago, Kelp Blue won the Zayed Sustainability Awards. They won $600,000 from the Zayed family for having essentially one of the most innovative blue economy projects in the world. And they're using underwater kelp. Of course, this sequestrates a lot of carbon, and they're going to essentially grow that and sell it off to Nestle, and they're going to raise $4 million, Namibian dollars worth of blue bonds. This will be the first blue bond ever in Africa to finance their project. And this is exactly what the President was envisioning in September 2020 on the 75th United Nations General Assembly, when he said, we really want us to change the structure of this economy like this. And we're going to use innovative financial tools to do that, like green bonds. And we wanted to link with African R&D, which is a lot of the work that society is going to help us do. So fast forward 2 years later, what we realized is what we want to do is bigger than Namibia. We will need the EU to buy the ammonia that Penetag and Hyphen made. We will need Maersk and MSC to buy the green ammonia or methanol that we will make in Namibia, right? And start using that in the investment. And so along the way, we started cultivating a habit of strategic partnerships, whether it's with the private sector players like Systemic or the Maersk McKinney Moller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, or indeed our own multilateral banks like the African Development Bank, which is why again is sitting here. We reached out to the AFDB and they really helped us accumulate world-class experts to help us think about how we build a green hydrogen ecosystem. And so through that partnership, which we call economic development, diplomacy, green economic diplomacy, which is essentially the fifth pillar of HBP2. We've been able to engage the Japanese government, the EU government, and we've started building this ecosystem. And as Guido mentioned, Namibia, for example, always had the ambition to be a logistics hub for Africa. So we sort of received around 1,600 vessels at peak between Lüderitz and Walvis Bay. We're looking at 168,000 containers and about 6.5 million tons of cargo, which is good, but it's not as big as it can be. But with that activity, which is what we're going to try and map in terms of decarbonization, we enable the Zambian market to access the global market for their copper. We will, if we do this well, we will be bottlenecking South Africa's ability to export its excess manganese from the Northern Cape and some of its, potentially even some of its iron ore. And in fact, we may add value to that iron ore in Namibia. So what we're trying to do, as Guido was mentioned, was not just industrialize Namibia, but provide Southern Africa with the various inputs they need to really sort of level out their industrialization activity. And then, of course, by doing that in a low-carbon way, we can attract strategic concessionary capital, right, that reduces the burden of us and our neighbors in terms of our fiscal liabilities. So, guided sort of a mix, right, of financing, infrastructure, R&D, and then partnerships in terms of the offtakes. And putting that ecosystem together will require, if I'm honest, intellectual capital beyond the Namibian government's ability to deploy Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, which is why these strategic LOI, for example, that we're going to be executing today in the Center for Zero Carbon Shipping from Denmark, is super important because it brings know-how that Namibia doesn't want, but that Namibia needs in order to be of service to its people and of course our neighbors as well. And that's why I'm very excited to really get going with the work, I think, in 2024. We will be doing this as a green hydrogen program, which is of course a program that has been funded as well through partnerships, both by the European Commission, by Invest International, and the Namibian government as well. So very exciting times, and I'm quite keen to hear some more details of the work that we'll be doing throughout the panel session.
One incident being
in order to make it being part of the solution we used to have to a base sector. We try to actually show that it is possible, maybe, and even an opportunity to a base sector with real opportunities. Shipping itself needs to decarbonize to enable those supply chains to decarbonize. So if you look now at those supply chains, many of the big companies they are relying on their scope 3 to disappear, be eliminated. Many of, for example, the big retailers, they have shipping as a major contributor to their needs to be. But at the same time, of course, shipping should enable also new supply chains. Meaning, we might in the future see that supply chain regionalization change. Right now, shipping has been used to commercial missions from a saving point of view. Supply chains have formed to take advantage of that. What Costa Rica and sail it to China to Canada and sail it back to Europe to sell it. Maybe it makes sense for the climate. So we might see changes in that shipping can enable new ways of doing things. And then it will enable also transportation of fuels. So today about 40% of international shipping is to transport energy around. And how is that going to be? People need to play a big role. So when Namibia gets ready to turn that hydrogen, some derivative or another, the shipping should be ready to do that and play its role in that. Very, very important. Because like you said, Europe needs the energy and other regions of the world need the energy.
with banks,
energy
investors
we
today,
believe will be produced where the sun shines.
not because our equipment is fast,
Everywhere it's used.
but because we are one of the most regulated sectors.
In that as well.
And yes,
This is one point that James this is the biggest. Namibia can be the engine of the region.
50 years and in some organizations 90 years even. There's never been a state push to legs the
objectives
to be social.
Namibia faces many challenges.
However,
There's a lot of youth unemployment.
today,
The transition from out is still underway.
it's not just that we have a selected but we also have to ensure that they compare
That's what we're going to be looking at currently. The jobs.
that the
Not just how
data that
levels
we
of
have
market
is
all the
reliable.
different, and it's going to be the administrative
And
side.
are
I imagine this
we
being
as
lead
transparent as possible?
and how do you, in terms of
Rather than
choosing
trying
your
to
priorities,
So
and then how do you train, how do you skill up local people? This is about what the jargon is called local content, as opposed to jargon, it's about local, it's about social
rapidly shrinking.
So,
If you look at one of the points, one is the distribution of CEO salary, but not just salary,
Namibia
but
is
so
not
that is
less
a
potential.
percentage of the average salary.
But there are other places around the world, capital markets, common industrial players, potential might not be quite as good. But it's a very big projects. And these are very, very, very big projects. These companies will anything. Everything is in general. That's not to say they're wrong. But this
They
is
might have stopped it, but they're still supporting it because their counterparts across the
and
world
to move
require.
and to prioritize.
And increasingly, all
This is why
regulation
Namibia, and that's why I emphasize on this about
aspects
if you want to
will
develop shipping,
start
you need
having that
local
local impact.
because you need somebody who knows how to produce steel. Who's going to help you to cut deals with the iron ore provider, offtake partners, etc. And that's what I think is good. It's not but it's cutting those and ladders and those opportunities that are very and so as to your question,
More sophisticated.
and if this succeeds, I think it will. But it's not going to be
For more topics,
It's going to succeed. It's
more
not
theory, and that the
James
demand
said.
behind the scenes
Now, one of the factors that plays really into the Libya
different
is that
organizations
it
and
is a very well government.
government
In the region that we seniors are official express the envy that how fast things are progressing next year.
but
As a senior, it's a country that has so there's a clear vision. That provides quite a good still companies don't ESG
as they develop,
that's what we're trying to do. Could become and also mobilize not only the GPU players but also other types of
Employee becomes about 15 deals, right? It doesn't roll off the tongue of government employees, that's just a private sector person, but it's true, right? So let's talk some practical numbers. That is GDP's 12 billion, 13 billion dollars now. And the high-tech project is looking at 10 billion euros. We've been switching translate of locomotives and buildings and rail. That was $4 to $5 billion. The port infrastructure was about 500 billion euros. You still have to go through transmission lines, some pipelines, the COI as well, that's maybe another billion euros as well. So when you start stacking up these numbers, you exceed our annual budget deficit like this. In fact, you start creeping up into double-digit percentages of our total debt stock in general. And so you see that it becomes very, very quickly unsustainable. For Honorable Shimi, who did a masterful job of really uncovering our pavilion yesterday, to find all of that with just Namibian data. And so we are beginning to start thinking very strategically about appropriate vehicles to house the assets that we're going to develop, ring-fence the revenue those assets will create, and start building SPVs and partnerships. Private sector players that don't just bring operational capability, but they also bring their own balance sheets and their own way to show visibility for bankers on how they will run the asset in such a way that the banks lower their cost of capital. So that's one. We're learning a lot from a man who's done this really well with Rotterdam and the Port Corporation. We're also, of course, talking to players like Ocean and others on the rail. But importantly, I think the big executing this MOU with the EU as well. And within that MOU, one of the first things that was being mobilized, and it was actually delivered here in November a year ago in Sharm el-Sheikh, was very strategic financing packages. So, for example, a $500 million facility, a euro facility was available to the Namibian government, 5-year sort of grace period, 25-year tenure, AAA rating in terms of cost of capital. It's money Namibia typically would not be before it's on. And we would need those partnerships, not just with the EIB, but with JBIC, that obviously signed on MOU yesterday with the Ministry of Finance. We will need that with the African Development Bank, with the World Bank. GBSA has actually given, for example, $6.7 million. I think 1.7 came from KfW. So the financing of the projects are going to have to be thought about differently and cannot be carried just on the Namibian balance sheet alone. And so you can see that partnership is the golden thread across this whole ecosystem. Whether it's partnership to build a steel plant, so if you want to build this steel plant, he will need more than just a stable environment politically. He will need to be able to see, how do I get this product from Namibia? Because, by the way, Namibia is not exactly like the busiest shipping corridor in the world. Right? We're not a Singapore yet. Mo and I are going to work on that a little bit. But we're not a Singapore yet. So the steel guys should say, why should I come this far down south? And if we can provide answers with regards to his scope 2 and scope 3 emissions as well, he begins to think, you know, if the continent wakes up to Ruto's call, and some of that steel doesn't have to go all the way to China, and it's going somewhere else, maybe to SA, to Mauritania, wherever one of us begins to really uninstall production. These are all valuable positions that if we work together as a continent, which is where people like the AFP need to be key, we can start to de-risk the story and our economies. Because, by the way, everyone needs to remember, the race isn't just on who captures this opportunity, it is the whole industrialization pathway. And while Africa is trying to do this, it's not like America and Europe and China are sitting still. They're using the IRA. Biden is giving $7 billion for 7 different hacking hubs across the US. Kamala Harris was talking about it yesterday. The IRA is unlocking billions and millions of dollars of investments in the US in the renewable sector. So the US is powering ahead, and they're also the largest producer of hydrocarbons in the world. So they're using some of that wealth. People think it's defensive to decarbonize hydrocarbon sector, to decarbonize industry. They're using that wealth offensively to capture new market share as the world is moving towards goods of a low carbon nature. And so if you're in Namibia, you need to realize that very, very quickly and know that we won't be able to do this in our own steam. And when we're asking for justice and equity, it's not just about decarbonization, it is how do we capture our fair share of this industrialization pie that is being baked right here in front of our own very eyes. And we're not the only ones competing for it. It's not Mauritania, Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, and South Africa. China, the US, and the EU are capturing chunks of this market share today. And they are using hydrocarbon-based money to do that. And so that conversation, I think, needs to be teased out more and more. The subsidies that the developed nations are writing to capture this market share, we don't have that money. And we don't have that money because they've choked the earth with all of the carbon, and now they help with this money. So how do we make that fair? How does Blueberry compete with Texas when Texas has an IRA subsidy of $3 a kilo? And by the way, I was talking to one of the guys from the Jeff Bezos Foundation, and he was saying if the IRA was going to hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions, because it's uncapped, right? It all depends on how much you reach. Namibia doesn't have that money. So, but yet we have this renewable endowment. But we was right. If you look at our cost of capital and you look at the subsidies, how do we compete? And that's why we do need partnership to get this right. Because if you don't do that, by the way, not only will you not solve climate change, because by the way, the continent is emitting today, and will emit exponentially when our economies and our population grow. So if you don't solve for Africa, you're not solving for the world. And you will get this massive inequality growing. And that comes with a whole bunch of global instability as well. And I think that needs to get baked into the conversations that our leaders are having. At 24, it's one of the things that we're going to actually do very deliberately. Put aside an actual dedicated communication budget to just explain to every politician, every parliamentarian, every business person, every child in school, and every person, normal person in the media streets, what green industrialization actually is. And that is why the president calls it the green industrialization agenda. Everyone in Namibia, our Northern Star, Bo's really nice sort of logo on the center is like a little rhombus, and there's a compass in the middle and a dot, and their dot is the North Star, right? It's useful for navigating. Namibia's socioeconomic North Star has always been Vision 2030. That is where we're trying to get to. And Vision 2030 has some audacious goals. But everyone, Vision 2030 says 2.3% unemployment in Namibia, 0.3, by the way, today unemployment is 33%. The Gini coefficient is supposed to be at 0.3. Today the Gini coefficient is 0.57, 0.58. We're the second most unequal society in the world, so we want to halve that. And it says 90% of our economic output needs to come from the secondary and tertiary sector. So everything we're doing here is aligned to Vision 2030. But when you talk about protein exchange membrane and electrolyzers, because that's what like Tobias is writing about in his book, everyone doesn't know how that relates to the Northern Star. And so there's a bit of that decoding as well. And that's very, very important, not just to get public sector buy-in, but to shape how we show up as a nation. What does our curriculum look like? What should our scholarships for education look like? What should we do with our vocational training centers? What should Tadashimi do with his budget? Where does he allocate it and why? Nature is everything above and below, right? What do you do with the assets below? Not just the lithiums or rare earths, but even the hydrocarbons. What do you do with those? What do you do with gas and oil? Yesterday, President spoke at a panel, a very important one, right at the end of the day, on how we're all going to scale up renewable energy. It was a global pledge. Everyone was there, from the EU president to Kamala Harris from the US as well. And I promise we did not work on this in the speech. But he got up on stage and he said, okay, hashtag I'm going to read all this cool stuff about renewables, but if you were a really tiny country and you were embarking on a green industrialization agenda and then you found oil, what did you do with it? Everyone was like, you don't talk about that at all. But that's our reality. As we were embarking on this journey, wanting to produce clean synthetic fuels because we recognize the future, then you found these hydrocarbons. And by the way, today, Norway is still pumping oil and making lots of money for its own oil money. It's also subsidizing electric vehicles. Will that well? Saudi is pumping oil money like hell, but they're also building NEOM. We've already talked about the US. Denmark is building a 5 gigawatt offshore island, but they're still pumping hydrocarbons. And these are countries with 10 times our GDP per capita and a $1.4 trillion sovereign wealth fund. Namibia is $300 million Namibian sovereign wealth fund. So what do we do? And if you get that communication wrong, you're going to lose the Namibian people, because they're going to say, wait, you just found billions and billions of dollars of oil and you're not going to do that because we're doing renewable energy. So how you communicate that vision becomes very, very, very important. And we're working with some clients, by the way, who are dabbling in both. You've got people like Total who are saying, I'm very excited about the hydrocarbons and I'm spending half of my capex, right, my global exploration capex to find oil in Namibia. But if you give me an opportunity, I would love to heavily get involved in the green hydrogen side and to produce some of the synthetic fuels. How do you communicate that to your people, but also to the global community? So it's one of the things the Green Hydrogen Program will be really trying to step up next year. And let's be honest, we're going to be learning on the job. We don't know everything, which is why we're trying to find the right friends and partners. And to be honest, again, I keep on talking about the AFTB. I think entities like the AFTB are going to need to be critical in defining the soul of Africans today and where we need to go, right? Decoding between like just narrative and noise and facts. How much money can we mobilize for what? If you're building a transmission line, at what cost? If you're building a gas to power plant, who's going to fund that? The EME won't fund it. But will the Japanese bank for an international corporation fund it? Possibly. Right? So those conversations we're going to need help with, Gani, and that's what we're so happy that you're here. You're helping to moderate the session, but you know, we're working with everyone else that we're working with. We're going to have to figure that out together. And we have to find a fair way of doing this. Because you couldn't possibly say to Namibia, don't dig up the hydrocarbons, but you're fracking in Alaska or in Texas or something like that. It just doesn't make sense. And by the way, I think the US permitted like oil sort of exploration a few months ago in Alaska. And the biggest narrative they wrote in their statement when they were interviewing people was it's great for employment creation. US has like 3% unemployment. It's a factor of 10 compared to where we are. So what do you do with that communication narrative? So we have some work to do, but it's a way to say that it'll be very exciting. And I think as Namibia, we just have to be humble about it. And then one last thing maybe I'd love to say about this is we're trying to develop this project with Hyphen today, and we are learning a lot on the job, right? So they have to go into the park and build just, for example, net masts. But the amount of time it takes to go into that park, because it's a downward protected area, the amount of fiscal resources that are needed from our Ministry of Environment and Tourism to put petrol in our cars to go with them is insane compared to what we were doing before, right? And so there's this reality check as well about how do you transform the town of Lüderitz into an economic hub that is arguably going to host the whole country's GDP in this little town, and the town council doesn't even yet have a CEO, or they're looking for a CEO. And so, you know, here at COP28, maybe the best kept secret is we're going to have to convene a strategic meeting between our key ministers, some of our partners, you know, away from cameras, and just sit and really sketch out what 2024 must look like, not what it can look like, what it must look like, for us to be able to deliver this narrative, I think, to people.
Yes.
let's get to work. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.